Happy Friday, everybody. We are back at the whiteboard. It's our first whiteboard of 2025. We have a new year, we have a new location, but we're going to talk about an old topic, wasted spend. Every year in January, this is the thing that brands and CMOs and executives and investors all start obsessing about when you look at the past year, 2024, what you spent, what worked, what didn't. Everyone comes back to, we had too much wasted spend. Things are bad. We need to fix that going forward. But I want to challenge that a little bit with today's whiteboard. And I want to talk about wasted spend, why it happens, the different reasons why it happens, and more importantly, what you can do about it. But I think first, it's really helpful if you start to think about wasted spend across your account. And for every account, you have something that looks like this curve, right? And if you plot the expected value or the conversions and performers, right? Whether those are placements, keywords, audiences, whatever, you're going to end up with something like this. There is a group, a top performers group, where the value, the number of conversions is super high, and it accounts for a percentage of spend, right? This is the Pareto principle that you see in ad accounts. 20% of the spend generates 80% of the results. It's true in virtually every account. Then you've got this mid-tier, weird, mushy middle, where it's generating results. It's not as good as the top performers, but there's something in it that makes it exciting. It could be that it's emerging, the volume's getting higher. It could be that it's a small little niche that's super relevant. It could be that on balance, it's not great, but there is some real big winners, like some outsized winners inside this. And then at the bottom, you have this low performers, and this is typically what's labeled as waste. And this can be anywhere from 10% of an ad account to 50% of an ad account, right? What really matters here is this kind of middle. Every ad account has this top performers. Where things get a little mushy is in this second part. Everybody's got low performers. So if you think about an ad account from that framework, you start to think, okay, well, what's going on with wasted spend? And I think it's really helpful, second, if you take another step back and say, okay, well, what's going on here? We're pretty confident we know what's going on here in top performers, but what's going on here? So what we do is we chart it like this. Everything that you do, Meta, Google, Microsoft, OTT, anything, you can group into this, right? We've got on the x-axis, the volume, how much there is. For keywords, it's search volume. For audiences, it's size and number of available impressions. For other placements, it's usually available impressions. There's high volume, there's low volume, right? And then on the y-axis, we look at expected value. So this isn't just relevance. This isn't just how much commercial intent there is. It's how much expected value that is, right? Those two things might not go hand in hand, but when you put them together, you get a value calculation. So something that's got really high expected value and a lot of volume is a money printer. Those are great, right? Your core audience, some super specific keywords. Like if you're in, for instance, luxury housing, luxury apartment rentals near me is a high volume, high value query. It prints money. And not surprisingly, these queries tend to be right here. So if we establish that, then the question is, well, what's the makeup here? And it's these three. So what you want to do when you're assessing wasted spend is determine which basket the wasted spend went in. And let's go through those. And then number two, what we do about it. So the first thing is the gems, right? These have high, super high value, but they're low volume, right? This might be something like best truck accident lawyer in California. Not searched that often, but a truck accident case could be super valuable. It might be something like best smart rings for fitness, right? That's a smart ring, a Halo, or whatever ring. Those are $400, $500 each. Super high value, but they're not searched often compared to something like, again, apartments or, phones, computers, etc., right? Those are over here. But you might have these terms that they're not searched often, but when they are, they're super high value. Then you go down into mysteries, right? These are the terms that we just don't know about. It could be it's an emerging tech. That happens all the time. There are new platforms coming online. 3 years ago, ChatGPT would have been a mystery search because only a handful of people knew that OpenAI was working on a GPT with a chat interface. Then obviously November 2022 happened and the rest is history. But for a long time, that would have been a mystery search, that if you knew it's kind of an emerging thing, that would have been cool. But you might also find things like really niche informational queries, like if you're in plaintiff's law, right? Something like what to do with car seats after an accident. Super random query, not searched often. But if you are in a plaintiff's law case, if you are an accident attorney, what is a really good signal that somebody has been in a car accident? They're asking about what to do with the car seats. And moreover, if they have car seats and they're thinking about it, they might have kids, which means that case might not just be one case, it might be multiple cases. So in the case where this is a low volume search, it is not searched often, maybe 50, 100, 200 times a month, but it could have some really good value in a few of these, right? The expected value might not be super high, it might be here, right? But you get the sense that, again, this could be a really good search. But then you have over here, these are the danger zone queries. Low value for you, but high volume. The easiest example of this is competitor branded terms, right? And if you've noticed from broad match, more and more and more, Google is matching, for instance, a super specific money printer term to a competitor brand, right? You see this all the time. You know, I recently searched for a new MacBook computer. I looked for MacBook M3. And I started getting ads for a whole bunch of Dell computers. Well, for Dell, this is a super low EV query. There is not a world that exists where I will buy a Dell computer. I would sooner just not have a computer than use a Dell computer. For Dell, the EV of this is 0, but they are spending money on that impression. Obviously not in the form of the click, but in the form of a lower click-through rate, and therefore a lower quality score, and therefore a higher cost, right? But that's the easiest example, but there are many more, right? There could be non-relevant terms. If we think about luxury apartments, what if it matches it to a realtor or a condo or a single-family home or an affordable home? Those all have staggeringly low expected values. For me, the luxury apartment rental, they are in this danger zone because I'm going to spend a lot of money because there's a lot of volume on those queries, and they are going to bring me 0 value or very close to 0 value. So that is money that is just not being productively spent. So as we start to think about wasted spend, the first thing we're going to do is understand, well, where did that waste happen? And if it happened here or here, that's one situation. If it happens here, that's another situation. So let's look at the extremes here, because the thing that I usually hear on calls, and what I literally just heard yesterday on a call with a CMO, is we want to cut every dollar of wasted spend. I was like, okay, well, that's a terrible idea. But let's just explain what that would be, right? If we said, hey, we're going to cut everything that did not produce, what would that mean? Well, number one, we take a very static view of the world. We would say that the searches tomorrow are the same as the searches today, but we know that's not true, right? People evolve, the way we search evolves, the platforms we search evolve. So that doesn't make sense. Number two, we would not be doing exploration. We would not be testing new queries. We would not be looking for new opportunities that might have super high value to you down the road. Number three, we would not be taking any risk with your account. But as anybody who invests will tell you, if the risk is 0, the upside is 0. That's how investing works, right? Because if there is a risk-free rate of return, it's not growing. That's just literally keeping you flat, which means that you are actually losing to competitors who are taking risks and gaining. And finally, you would just be too conservative, right? You would not be using your marketing in an effective way. You'd be losing yourself time, you'd be losing an advantage, and over time you would then lose. This is, in some ways, the eBay strategy when they talk about pausing their branded terms. They said it was a wasted spend. The reality is that spend wasn't entirely wasted, they just misvalued it. And the end result is no one cares about eBay, Amazon's a multi-trillion-dollar company, and eBay is maybe the fourth thing you think about when you think about e-commerce after Amazon and Shopify and Meta shops and TikTok shops and really even Etsy. Then after that, we go to eBay and Craigslist. And you see how that goes, right? When you try to eliminate all waste, you put your company in a place of stagnation. The flip side is 100% waste. And if you are wasting 100% of your budget, you are bad at math, you don't know your customers, your product probably is garbage, and you probably shouldn't be doing marketing. So if you're here, that's bad. But 0 is just as bad as 100. You're either dying a slow death or dying a fast death. But either way, you're dying. So maybe don't do that, right? You want to find a happy medium based on where your organization, where your business is, between no waste and everything is being wasted so that you can actually grow, right? We need some waste. We just need the right kind of waste. We need the kind of waste that is helping us identify more gems and more mysteries that we can then push in. Because remember, as these are the queries that other brands probably aren't thinking about. They're probably not bidding on these queries. They're probably not tapping into these audiences. And if they're not doing that, that means the incrementality of you doing it is higher, which means these today might be these tomorrow. So let's take one more step back and then go into what you can do. So number one, what really is waste? And I think this is an area of confusion. And most marketers will look at it from a very fixed lens and say, anything that didn't produce the result that we want, a purchase, a lead, a sale, a conversion, a qualified lead, who cares, a subscription, at or below our target cost is wasted in some way. Maybe. I would say instead it's dollars invested that have a negative expected value. Because candidly, especially for low volume terms, every ad is a bet, right? We are making a wager that a certain ad placed at a certain time for a certain thing will return at a certain rate. The reality is it may or it may not. You could just get unlucky. The lower the sample size, the more luck plays into it. But we want to think about, so we think about expected value, right? It takes away the noise of resulting, which is where we assess something based purely on the result. And we look at the underlying process that went into you placing that ad, or you bidding on that keyword, or you targeting that audience. And we say, was the process right? And did we get unlucky? Because if the process was right and we got unlucky, that's not waste, or it shouldn't be considered waste. If the process was terrible and we didn't get what we want, that is waste. If the process was terrible, but we got lucky, we need to not throw that out. Because sometimes you do just get lucky, right? So where does that leave us? And I think there's 5 reasons why waste happens, and there's a solution to each one of these. So first, I think you need to acknowledge that there's going to be waste in accounts. That's good and healthy and normal, right? If you are not exploring, if you're not pushing boundaries, if you're not trying new things, you are not growing. You're stagnating and you are dying. You evolve or you die. That is how the world works. That is how nature works, and nature is undefeated. So, if the most common source of waste when I find it in accounts is poor financial targets. Ad platforms are very good at giving you what you ask for. But if you misvalue a term, if you misvalue an audience, if you say, hey, you should bring me in leads for this set of terms or this audience at that price, and Google does and Facebook does, but they don't turn into what you want, whether they don't purchase enough, whether their leads are just not as qualified as you expect, that's waste on you because you set the wrong target, right? There is no person alive that can outcompute Google or Facebook. You cannot outtrade a computer. So you need to use it to your advantage. Google and Meta and maybe even Microsoft on a good day are going to be infinitely better at determining the expected value of a given impression at a given point in time. You need to accept that and make sure that you are setting them up for success with the right targets, the right target ROAS, the right target CPA. If you're on manual, the right bid. The number one source is, candidly, You didn't assess the value of the term correctly. You didn't understand the audience correctly. And that brings us to number 2. You didn't understand the audience. You don't know who you're going after. You didn't take the time to research how the audience is searching. You did not do query research. You did not check your SERPs. You did not examine a social media audience and actually understand how they like to communicate, how they like to receive information, what their pain points were, what the features are that you have that actually provide benefits to them, and communicate it. Which leads to 3, your creative sucked. Now in Google, that could be that your search ad looked like everybody else's search ad. And if there's 4 at the top of the page and yours looks just like everybody else's, you got a 1 in 4 chance. If your creative doesn't speak to them, or even better, your creative was too general or too generic or too copy and pasted, the wasted spend isn't on the target you set, it isn't on the keyword, it's on you, the marketer, for not looking and understanding that audience and saying, how can I make this ad stand out versus how can I make this ad just exist? Number 4, inaccurate or inconsistent data. If you don't give the platforms the right data to optimize on, you're going to have more waste, right? I see so many marketers today trying to be clever. Hey, I know purchase optimization on Meta is a little weird. I'm not sure. We're going to bid for add to carts. Then you get all shocked and shaken when you end up with an audience full of people who are super happy, like many people that I know, to just add shit to carts left and right, clickety click, but they don't ever buy. They window shop. They leave it in their carts and they hope for a sale. They hope for a promo code. Like, well, why didn't they convert? Well, because you didn't ask Meta for the people who were going to buy. You asked Meta for the people who were going to add it to the cart, and you assumed that audience was continuous and shared the same properties and would continue to perform the same way as an audience of people who Meta thinks is going to purchase. But they're not the same thing. You supplied inaccurate or incorrect data, or an incorrect target, or both, and well, that's what you get. And the last one is you're just bad at management. If you aren't, for instance, looking through search terms reports and you go through, for instance, a PI search account, right? And you see somebody searching car accident lawyer, and all of a sudden you start to see Morgan & Morgan in the search term, the world's large, or the US's largest plaintiff's attorney firm. If somebody's searching Morgan & Morgan, they're not coming to you, John Smith Inc., right? I'm sorry, they don't care about you. They want John Morgan to take their case. You're not going to win that. You don't have the resources. So you should be excluding that, right? Unless you have a very specific, reason why you can take that from him, right? I'm just using John Morgan as an example. But, right, if you are a Facebook advertiser and you see an audience segment underperforming, not doing what it's supposed to be doing, and you just continue to let it spend, or you don't adjust the target, or you don't properly value it, that's just bad management. That's the waste that you need to eliminate, right? These are the things that you should be looking at when you think about waste, because if you do these things, you will find more of these, which will lead to more of this. You will still have a percentage of spend that is wasted. That is okay, that is normal, that is good. You will reduce that percentage, and you will increase the percentage of your budget that is going to super high expected value terms. That should be your goal for 2025, because if you can do that, your account will perform much better. But if you're aiming for this, you're making a mistake. If you're doing this, you're making a mistake. What we need to do is take a step back and say, how do I get more of this? How do I use wasted spend as a learning opportunity to advance my account over the long term? Not how do I cut it all off? So I hope as we have these conversations, and we know they're going to happen, all of us are able to take a step back and say, maybe not all waste is created equal. Maybe not all waste is bad. Let's have a nuanced discussion and find and take from our wasted spend what is valuable and leave the rest, in the words of our dear friend Bruce Lee. And with that, have a nice weekend or week or whatever you're going to have.